guys, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we'll look into a scenario in which the Middle East and Europe go to war. Since Europe ratherly outpowers, well, the Middle East, you could say, but it's kind of evened out. Turkey can hold them back, but we got Italy, France, Britain. Yeah, that's tough. But Turkey can have Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. The UAE too, because they can be probably great. But they start their invasion to the surprise of Europe. Europe never thought this day would happen. Also, keep in mind, we got rid of NATO, because, well, we don't need America. America's not a part of Europe. Neither is Canada, nor Greenland. And they quickly take over Cyprus, with them advancing in Greek islands and advancing into Thrace. And Bulgaria. Europe's months. They didn't expect this. They have months to fully mobilize, it appears. With these guys mobilizing despite being mobilized, they mobilize even more with conscription. With them quickly advancing through Greece's defensive forces. But they predict they have months to advance before they might be in trouble. And with all of these nations, they managed to cross into Ukraine before they decide to take Romania's capital, Bucharest, and they move in and take Plovdiv and Sofia. And they cause a capitulation of Bulgaria already, followed by the crumble of Montenegro. And then they move up, and they manage to also take out Moldova. Yes, they're doing good. You may ask, how are they doing so well? Well, they are. There's multiple reasons why. And now they're advanced to here. This is where a counter-offensive is launched, with the Europeans pushing them back in Moldova. But during this time, they decide to move up with an advance in Serbia. With moving in up into Bosnia too, to create a double front around it, which they use to make an encirclement in Belgrade, which leads to their capturing of the city. I know they've already captured Bosnia, so okay, I'm going to move it to here for a second. They take it, yay, for them. But I think I'm on Europe's side. Maybe not. That's bad. But Europe's cool, I guess, maybe. Turkey's great too. So let's see how the advance goes. Well, an advance is led, kicking them back into northern Romania, with Hungary being hungry. And so they start an offensive into Hungary, with them making a naval landing in the Crimea, which they quickly take it. And they quickly advance into southern Ukraine. But they get stuck there as they start another offensive. But they get stuck right before capturing Odessa, with their goal to advance to Turkey. Not Turkey, Italy. And they manage to take Venice somehow, as they take Bratislava. They decided to launch a counter-offensive, with Polish troops moving in over here, and German plus Italians moving in here, and German forces help the Polish forces, yes. As they re-liberate Slovenia! This is great. And they take back Hungary's land. As Ukraine launches its own counter-offensive with no one else, as they quickly kick the Middle East out of Crimea, and then they move in here. Well, it's probably Russia, but we kept Kaliningrad, not Russia, because if we put Russia in, it would completely tilt the balance. With them managing to continue their holding up of the front. But then Italian invasion in southern Greece, a British invasion in Albania, and a French in Montenegro, leads to the Italian, French, and British forces doing really well as Italian and British link up, not Italian, French, and British. And then German forces decide to land down over here. As they connect these forces, quickly outmaneuvering, they move forces to try to hold this back. But what they didn't see coming was an offensive down the Adriatic by a joint German, Polish, Italian, French, British offensive with the rest of the European nations. And quickly, Bosnia's capital is reliberated, with them launching an offensive that literally fails. They get to here. With them starting to land on these islands with a lot of plans. With them getting pushed back in Thrace, and in Romania manages to recapture Bucharest, which demoralizes the forces. And while a big offensive happens here, with them being forced out of Belgrade pretty rapidly, with these places being fully liberated, with Bulgaria being the last to fall out of Turkish hands. Oh, not Turkish, Middle Eastern hands. And you may ask, what's the first country to fall? Well, a joint European army, yes, the full European army, invades Thrace. And then they also make a landing over here. And then they can easily get support in from there. They use this to take over the Dardanelles and Bosphorus Strait. Strategically, now they have them cut off from there, from being able to block the forces from moving. And with problems accessing the Suez Canal due to this war, they've closed it. They managed to retake it. Yes, they do. May think that's pretty narrow. That could easily be... Yeah, they widen it a bit. And no, there's not European rebels. And with, well, I don't think surprises anyone, the beginning of an invasion on the Strait of Hormuz. Another strategic ground to try to take. And they move in to take the city of Aden, Port City, and they manage to take the city of Suez. Basically taking over big chunks of Yemen. Basically the entire population of Yemen. And while a failure to push back in certain regions, but they managed to push them back a bit here, but not strategically. Not the least. And they push back a bit in Turkey. But they decide to launch a new landing over here. The Mosul landing over here to prevent Turkey from being encircled in its armies, the Middle Eastern armies not being able to advance out. They withdraw some troops back and use troops to launch a counteroffensive, with them being pushed back towards Ankara. Now some forces stay back, but believing it could fall easily, a lot retreat back. As Ankara does fall, they manage to retreat a bit, leading to a much more secure front to fight from, as they manage to push them back. As they got pushed out of there, European forces decide their best advance is here, with mostly British, French, European. It's mostly European, but a lot of British and French make up that European army. They land over here to make an offensive. Well, they get held back for a bit, but they quickly use this to get more forces in to the Suez Canal occupation they made and the landing to do this. with them not surrendering because they still have potential. And well, they occupy it to take the northern coast. Basically, they use that to have forced capitulation of Egypt. They push a bit more before eventually leading to the capitulation withdrawal of Middle Eastern forces, a tiny bit remaining after its capitulation. With quickly, Yemen's coast is captured, basically, southern coast. But during this time, they launch an operation into Kuwait. Yes, Kuwait in northern Arabia. Quickly, they move into where most of the important resources for launching a war are in Iran. Try to make it really weak. Well, they start struggling to hold this front back as a quick capture of Baghdad happens. Meaning, basically, this country is bound to surrender, so it's occupied, basically, by its allies. With Iran realizing an offensive here is not going to work, they launch one over here. So does Saudi Arabia. But what happened next was not good. With an invasion managing to take over the Strait of Hormuz, meaning their access is not limited anymore to continue that front up to the north. Wait, what? What's that strait called? I got that strait wrong or that strait wrong. One or the other. Well, Turkey is forced into a surrender. With the invasion of the Kurdish areas of Iraq and Syria occurring now, which leads to a massive cutoff in between these two allies, which they manage to capture. Once they capture that area, a massive rebellion broke out with the belief in overthrowing the government. Yeah, starts over in this area. I don't think there's anything major about it, but more areas start joining this resistance. Well, with them leading to the surrender of Iran and demanding a withdrawal from their capital. And they also manage to get a withdrawal there, and then they withdraw from here, realizing they don't need to hold that territory as much. And they launch their offensive from Egypt to take over Israel-Palestine area, whatever you want to call it, area. They take it over, so we can just call it, not Turkey, Europe. With Europe managing to connect these two fronts, they have three fronts now. With a breakthrough in the Yemen front, and well, another breakthrough up here. With not long after the fall of all the other nations, they managed to capture this coast, leading to anti-government rebels in Saudi Arabia too. Which leads to these forces managing to capture Riyadh as they advance faster. And these rebels continue an offensive until they manage to get a peace. And seeing these rebels as democratic, they manage to give all the land back to Saudi rebel state. But here they make a joint European occupation. Must be a reason. They also make a European occupation of the area surrounding the Suez Canal, and a European occupation zone here. The European occupation zones, there's 2 made so far. And this is not all that they will make. They make one over here, along this strategic area. They make another over there. And well, I don't think they need to make any more. With them making one here, we'll leave the borders, I guess. Can. And then they make puppets. Egypt. And they continue with what the borders were. Why would they do this for a peace treaty? It's not really much happening. Except a change in borders. With these 2 nations, nations who had best chance managing to not get fully invaded because of their people stopping it from happening in its tracks. And well, that's pretty much all for today's video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Wild Mapper out, but not until you subscribe. Bye!